Back here on HQ Spotlight, we are in the thick of draft season. The mocks are coming at you left and right as we are getting closer and closer to the big day in Pittsburgh, PA. Just your luck, we have another mock draft coming your way because it is Mock Draft Mondays here on HQ Spotlight. Of course, highly expected that the Raiders are going to take former Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza at #1 overall. But aside from that, nothing else is for certain, and things could go either way. So let's get into it with Mike Renner, his latest mock. We have Renner and JP Acosta with us. And guys, the most certain thing that we know, the Raiders, we're like 99.999% sure they're going to take Fernando Mendoza at #1 overall, Mike. And that's what we're seeing in this mock as well.
Yeah, this one is a no-brainer. It's been a no-brainer since, he won the national title. The season he had, the Cinderella season at Indiana, should not have happened, and it happened because he's a special kind of leader. I do think that the Raiders are, they're getting a talented guy, but what separates him are the intangibles, and that's really what you want, right, when you're drafting a guy who, because all these quarterbacks need to get better once they get to the NFL level. Fernando Mendoza, what he's proven is that he will do whatever it takes to reach the pinnacle of his position. If you're a Raiders fan, you got to be happy as heck to be getting this guy.
Yeah, he's certainly going to be diving into the end zone when it matters, whatever it takes. We saw it time and time again at the college level. Let's make our way down here to #2, and this is where the fun begins, maybe the uncertainty begins. We have the Jets taking David Bailey out of Texas Tech. So, JP, what could he bring to this Jets squad?
I think when it comes to David Bailey and what he's going to bring to the Jets, it's going to come down to Bailey or Arvell Reese for New York, but I think Bailey offers a little bit more of a clean-cut prospect right now, and I think that's what the Jets need. David Bailey is extremely fast upfield. He's one of the best pressure guys in this draft class, and I think because of that speed and his growing and expanding game when it comes to winning with power, I think it sort of offsets some of his limitations as a run defender, some stiffness that he has in his lower body. But the dude transferred from Stanford to Texas Tech and immediately was one of the best edge defenders in college football. I think his speed, I think his burst up the field, and I think that growing repertoire when it comes to adding power to his game is going to really help him when he gets to the NFL level. And the Jets need to create some impact plays on the defensive side of the ball, and David Bailey's going to do just that.
Yeah, you see it there. The FBS ranks first or second in every single category that was listed. JP, you mentioned it. It comes down to David Bailey or Arvell Reese, which brings us, of course, to the Cardinals, who are picking at #3 overall. And, Mike, you have him taking Arvell Reese out of Ohio State. We know the Cardinals need a lot of things, especially a quarterback, likely not going to find that in this draft. So tell us more about the pairing here with Arvell Reese going to Arizona.
Yeah, there's no quarterback I'm taking here at #3 overall. And I know Cardinals fans hate the term hybrid linebacker. It seems like Steve Keim drafted everyone under the sun between Hassan Reddick and Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins. This is a different cat, though, in Arvell Reese. He is a much different type of linebacker than those guys. And what really encourages me is the play strength for a guy who's just over 240 pounds. He was manhandling tight ends, manhandling offensive tackles, and he did it all with no formal skill work in that department. He was with the off-ball linebackers. That's what he did. But when he rushed the passer, he looked like he could be an elite one. So you're going to have some patience. It's not going to look like, what we expect from a top 5 edge rusher right out the gate. But if you give this guy some seasoning as a pass rusher, I think his ceiling is special. That's what you take at this point in the draft. And he is what everyone wants. The guy who can rush from anywhere, can do anything in the front seven. Those guys make you far more flexible as a defensive coordinator.
So Cardinals fans, put away the PTSD that you might have from the phrase hybrid linebacker. This one's going to be different, okay? Making our way down the board here at #4. It's the Robert Saleh era for the Tennessee Titans, and they get a new weapon in the backfield for a young quarterback in Cam. I almost said Cam Love. I made them a hybrid name. Cam Ward. It's Jeremiyah Love, JP.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that are sort of shaken at the fact by you take a running back in the top 5, but make no mistake, Jeremiyah Love is one of the 3 best players in this draft class. His creativity as a runner at the second level is some of the best that I've ever seen. He's extremely fast, but I do think his quick footwork and his expanding game as a receiver makes him such a dual threat that's sort of similar to guys that we've seen enter like Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs and how they're able to affect the game as both runners and receivers. But I think his play strength and contact balance is so underrated. And for a Titans team that needs to find explosives, they were not able to be explosive. And I don't think that any of the receivers in the top 5 make a lot of sense. So I just go ahead and grab the best offensive player here, which is Jeremiyah Love, and go and get explosive, go and get faster. And I think he's going to take a lot of pressure off of Cam Ward to create both in the scrambling and just in the standard process as a passer.
So in this mock, we have Jeremiyah Love going number 4 overall. The last time that we saw a running back get drafted higher than that, or at least that was Saquon Barkley, 2nd overall. The Giants took him. I think that worked out for the Eagles in the end. But that brings us to the Giants, right, where they're picking Mike at number 5. And here you have them revamping their O-line with this pick.
Yeah, I think if I'm John Harbaugh and I inherit this Giants roster, the biggest thing I have to do is just keep Jackson Dart healthy. You know, look at last year and how banged up he was and the concussion issues and the play style issues. It's like we need to make sure that this guy is upright or else we really don't have a chance here in New York. And so Maui Noa, to me, is perfect for the Giants in particular because they don't really need the right tackle right now. What they do need is right guard, so much so that they signed Daniel Faalele. And you can ask Ravens fans how they feel about Daniel Faalele. All I know is you don't want him starting week 1. You would much rather have this guy at right guard. And then once Jermaine Illuminor, your right tackle right now, once he kind of ages out in his mid-30s here, that's when Maui Noa kicks back out to right tackle, the position he played at Miami, and you really don't miss a beat there. So this pick for the Giants in particular, I think just really makes sense with where they are and what they have to do, which is develop Jackson Dart.
Not only is it mock draft season, it's also the season where we have to kind of play the musical chairs out in our heads and remember that Harbaugh is now the head coach of the Giants, and we're going back and forth, right? As we make our way down here, we have the Browns selecting at number 6, taking Kadyn Proctor. This is a massive human, 6'7", 352. So what can his size, not only his size, but that paired with his athleticism, bring to this Browns team, JP?
I think when you're looking at the Kadyn Proctor selection for the Browns, it's because they need a left tackle in the biggest way. They've already addressed the offensive line and some of the other spots in free agency when it comes to getting Zion Johnson, Elton Jenkins, trading for Titus Howard. They started to rebuild this offensive line, but the one spot that's missing is left tackle. I think Kadyn Proctor is a little bit more volatile than a lot of the other top tackles in this draft class, but at his best, he is such a rare athlete at that size, at that strength. The athleticism, I mean, they were throwing passes to him. You don't get passes thrown to you as an offensive lineman unless you are a very good athlete. And so I think Kadyn Proctor, he has a lot of stuff to work on, especially when it comes to weight management and how he controls his balance. But I think when you draft a guy this high, and I think for what he's going to give Cleveland, it's the physicality. I think it's some of the movement skills and space. But once he's able to truly lock in, I think this could be a really nice pick for Cleveland.
All right, next up, we have the Commanders selecting at number 7 overall, and they're taking Sonny Styles. I've seen some mocks where he goes as high as number 4. He's going here 7 off the board to the Commanders. Renner, is he definitely a top 10 pick in your eyes?
Oh, 100%. And you can throw linebacker value out the window. When the linebacker tests like a cornerback, those are the guys that go in the top 10. And the cornerback is 6'4", 245 pounds here. This is a different cat. He's going to go in the top 10. It's just, I think this is his floor, truthfully, at number 7 overall. Just given what the Commanders want to do. You look at their offseason overhaul in the front 7. We talked about it all last fall. This was one of the most unathletic front 7s in the entire NFL. They did not have juice. All of a sudden, you add Odafe Owe, K'Lavon Chaisson, Leo Chanel, and now Sonny Styles. You go from one of the most unathletic to one of the most athletic overnight. This is what a Dan Quinn front 7 is supposed to look like. He loves having speed everywhere to bring it from everywhere. They're going to have that. This is a Commanders Dan Quinn-esque linebacker.
A lot of Cowboys fans that I know as well are praying that he falls to them, but I'm not so sure that's going to happen. Let's go to number 8. That's where we have the Saints picking here, and we're actually going back-to-back Buckeyes, where Carnell Tate goes off the board, JP.
This is a dream pick for the Saints right here. They're hoping that they can stay at 8 and get one of the best receivers on the board. I think Carnell Tate offers the best combination of size, I think athleticism, and the ability to win on the outside. I think that's really where Carnell Tate stands out, especially when it comes to what the Saints need. Tyler Shuck was very good as a rookie to start his career, but they weren't able to be explosive. They're trying to find explosive plays downfield. That's where Carnell Tate really thrives. I think his body control and fluidity when working the boundary, when working the sideline, is the most impressive part of his game. And I'm not too worried about a 4.52 40-yard dash. That is what shows up on tape. I don't think his speed is that big of an issue, because when you're able to win in close encounters like Carnell Tate can, I think he creates a really nice combination with Chris Olave. And I think you're really able to see Tyler Shuck unlock some more of the deep ball that was sort of flashing and truly consistent in New Orleans.
All right, we're just getting started here on HQ Spotlight as we go through Mike Renner's latest 2026 mock draft, quickly recapping picks 1 through 8. We've got 3 Buckeyes going off the board in the top 8 in Arvell, Reese, Sonny Styles, and Carnell Tate. Of course, number 1 overall, no surprise there, where Fernando Mendoza goes number 1 to the Raiders, and then David Bailey going number 2. All right, we got more Buckeyes to discuss, though. We have Caleb Downs, and then, of course, LSU standout Mansoor Delane. Where they land in this latest mock, that's coming up after the break. Back here on HQ Spotlight, where our mock draft Monday continues. We're picking up with number 9, where the Chiefs are on the clock, and we're talking about Rueben Bain Jr. going off the board. Renner, there are some reports surfacing out there about some very serious off-the-field issues dating back to 2024. So how does that impact Rueben Bain Jr.'s draft stock?
Yeah, I just saw a tragic story reported by Ollie Conley of the Reed Optional, saying that he was the driver in a car crash that tragically ended in the death of one of the passengers. Reportedly, the NFL has known about this, but obviously not a great report, and not going to be for everyone, things like this. We've seen these historically. The Chiefs be one of the teams, though, that's willing to take chances on guys like this. And I think even from an on-field perspective, this was always kind of a Chiefs dream scenario. This is a guy who fits Steve Spagnuolo's defense. He is a power type of edge rusher who is exactly, what Steve Spagnuolo wants at that position, a guy who can collapse the pocket. So for the Chiefs in particular, they've really struggled to get edge rushers. Brett Veach has not been able to find those guys more often than not. Some of his worst picks over his career have been at this position because it's hard to find them outside the top 10. Bain certainly qualifies as a top 5 talent in this draft class, but could slide to here.
All right, next up, we got to talk about the Bengals. They're picking at number 10, where once again, they're using this opportunity to try and bolster their defense. JP.
Once again, we're going back to defense, and it's got to be Caleb Downs. We're writing this Sharpie at this point. We are manifesting this pick. There are 2 reasons why this makes a lot of sense. The Bengals last season gave up 3.43 yards after contact per attempt last season, 3rd highest in the NFL. They also missed 21.8% of their tackles last season, 4th highest in the NFL. They were some of the worst tackling defensive backs, the worst tackling defenses I've ever seen. Caleb Downs is a special football player. His football IQ is off the charts. His ability to manage space and close space without being such an overwhelming athlete is truly special. But on top of that, he just doesn't miss tackles. He's always in the right position to make the right play. You can play him at nickel. You can play him at safety. I just think having a guy like Caleb Downs, who's going to be the captain of your defense, you can just set him back there and you don't have to worry about anybody else for the rest of that secondary, because Caleb Downs is going to get him in the right spot at the right time.
So that's the 4th Buckeye to go off the board, 4 in the top 10 picks there in this latest mock. Next up, we have the Dolphins picking at number 11. As we're gearing up for a rebuild, really, to say the least, in Miami. So, Renner, what direction do you have them going here at number 11?
Yeah, usually you don't start off a rebuild with a corner, but this corner class is too good. And this guy is too safe of a pick in Mansoor Delane, the LSU corner. And when you dominate the way he did in the SEC, especially with what the SEC is now, these super conferences, you feel pretty good about this guy translating to the NFL. You see there 11 passes defended. He allowed fewer than 15 catches all season long. There was just no attacking this guy. Now, he's not the traitsiest of corners, but I think he's perfect for Jeff Hafley's defense because he's so versatile. He can really wear a lot of different hats in your defense, and he's just a smart, intelligent football player. So for all those reasons, a very nice start to the new era here in Miami.
Yeah, this was such a need for that team last season. It was like injury after injury that was happening in the offseason all the way through into training camp for this Dolphins team. Next, we have the Cowboys on the clock at number 12, taking Jermod McCoy. Didn't play this past fall, but does that give you any pause or concern, JP, about him translating to the next level?
I'm not super concerned because at his pro day, he ran a 4.38, 38-inch vertical jump. Those are numbers that I expected from Jermod McCoy off his 2024 tape. And on that 2024 tape, he looked like one of the best players in college football, regardless of position. I think if we were just going off of 2024, Jermod McCoy would be one of the best players in this draft, and I still think that he is. The Cowboys also are not shy from taking those guys with knee injuries or injuries that have affected their draft stock. They took Arvell last season. I think McCoy is a much better player than Arvell, and I think his ball skills and athleticism would really stand out in Christian Parker's defense.
All right, next up we have the Rams, who are picking at number 13 via the Falcons, adding a new weapon for Matt Stafford and Makai Lemon. Renner.
Yeah, I think the Rams are in win now mode a little, right? As much as you can be as a well-run franchise because of Matt Stafford's age and the fact that they know who they got to beat, right? They're in the same division as the Seattle Seahawks. They ain't going anywhere. So how do you beat the Seahawks? I think you got to outscore them at this point. They fixed the biggest need in the secondary. Now we got to just put more points on the scoreboard. And how do we do that? A guy by the name of Makai Lemon, I think, is NFL ready and perfect for this Rams offense. And what he does is allows you to give Davante Adams some rest here. Make sure he's healthy at the end of the season. Davante turns 34 in December. He can take a lot of those reps off him, allow Davante to be your red zone sort of guy during the season. And then when playoff time comes, you take the training wheels off. But to me, Makai Lemon's so NFL ready, such a tough physical over the middle wide receiver. He would fit perfectly in with this Rams core.
All right, next up we have the Ravens. They're on the clock for pick 14. They're going the tight end route with Kenyon Sadiq. So, JP, how does he fit into this Ravens offense as it's currently constructed?
This is a perfect fit for Sadiq and the Ravens because of how much offensive coordinator Declan Doyle, who comes from Chicago, and how much the Bears use 12 personnel. Last season, they had the 6th highest use of 12 personnel last season. That's two tight ends on the field. And Kenyon Sadiq is such a nice complement to what Mark Andrews offers right now as a receiver. He's strong after the catch. He has freakish athleticism. I mean, a 4.39 40-yard dash at 241 pounds is one of the most absurd numbers I've seen from a tight end. And it just makes a lot of sense for Sadiq to be the pick here because of how much they want to be a little bit bigger and how much they can use Sadiq after the catch and be a little more explosive. So I like the idea of Sadiq here with the Ravens. And you have Sadiq, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry on the field. Those are three of the greatest athletes probably going to be on a football field that I've ever seen.
That's kind of scary if you're in the AFC North trying to compete with that. All right, there you have it, folks. Picks 9 through 14. So let's recap it for you. We just talked about it. Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon, going to Baltimore. Yet another Buckeye off the board in Caleb Downs, going to the Cincinnati Bengals. Coming up next, we have the Bucs on the clock, and then the Jets picking for the second time in the first round. That's all coming up as our Mock Draft Monday continues after the break. Back here on HQ Spotlight, if you're just hopping in, we are going through our Mock Draft Monday, picking things up at number 15 overall, where, Mike, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock.
Yeah, I have them going Penn State guard, Vega Ioane. To me, he's a plug-and-play left guard, and you put him next to Tristan Wirfs on the left side, you really don't have to worry about the blind side for a decade. To me, this guy is one of the safest pass protectors I've seen in recent years. And I think the Bucs O-line, how banged up they were, was a big part of their issues last season. Get that back to full strength. And this is a team that, they don't have a lot of needs. There's not a lot of glaring holes on this roster. They just need a lot of the guys who are on it, who are getting paid a lot of money, to play better than they did last year. So we'll see where they go. But to me, this is a very safe pick to right the boat there in Tampa Bay.
Did not allow a sack in the final 2 college seasons. Absolutely remarkable. Now we have the Jets picking for the second time in the first round. This is, of course, part of the Sauce Gardner trade. The pick comes via the Colts. They got a pass rusher, the Jets that is, with the pick number 2. So, JP, what do they do here at 16?
They go pass catcher here with Omar Cooper from Indiana, and I love the idea of this for this offense because Omar Cooper Jr. does a lot of things that sort of tie the skills of A.D. Mitchell and Garrett Wilson together. He's super strong after the catch. He's really well built for a guy who's 6 feet, 205 pounds. He's really strong after the catch with his physicality, and I think his catch radius is a lot better for a guy that's sort of deemed undersized and played in the slot exclusively at Indiana. But when you go back and watch his 2024, I think he can play outside, but I think at the NFL level, he's best as sort of a power slot where you can work off of Garrett Wilson, work off of A.D. Mitchell, and that way the Jets offense has some more layering. But I really like the idea of this and Cooper as the connective tissue to blend both of those guys' skills together in New York.
All right, yeah, Cooper goes off the board to the Jets, and next up we have the Lions on the clock at pick 17, and Renner, we know that Detroit needs a tackle.
Yeah, this feels like it's going to be best tackle available, and rightly so. It's a very good offensive tackle class. You'll probably get some good value here at pick 17. So I have him going more Monroe Freeling, the Georgia tackle who's played some on the right side, played more on the left side this past year, so probably could do either for you depending on if you really want to move Penei Sewell to the left side or not, but this would give you a pretty freaky tackle duo. I mean, Monroe Freeling is explosive as heck. He's only getting better. His tape towards the end of last season was nowhere near what it was the beginning of last season. So I love drafting offensive linemen like that, getting the guys who are freakishly athletic and only getting better. That's Monroe Freeling.
All right, we're going to keep it in the division and talk about the Vikings, who are selecting at pick 18. And JP, they're addressing the safety position here at 18.
Yeah, with Dillon Thieneman here, it feels like the pick for outside of the obvious reasons. It just makes sense as he's the Harrison Smith replacement. I think his range really showed up when he was at Purdue, but when he transferred to Oregon, I really liked his ability to come off the roof of a defense and make a lot of tackles close to the line of scrimmage. 4.35 40-yard dash. He's got extremely explosive athleticism. I think his footwork is really nice, and I think in Brian Flores' defense, that asked their safeties to do a lot of different stuff when it comes to coming down to fit the run, playing deep and trying to make plays on the ball in passing game situations. I think Dillon Thieneman offers the best blend of being able to do a little bit of everything for Flores' defense, and I think when you get him close to the line of scrimmage, when you have him playing with his great vision, I think he's going to really be a nice fit for Brian Flores in Minnesota. All
right, next up we have the Carolina Panthers picking at 19, and Carolina goes wide receiver in the first round for a third straight year, taking KC Concepcion. Renner.
Well, if you haven't hit the first couple times, right, you got to keep going. And now they did hit last year, right? T-Mac, yes. Rookie of the year. He's been awesome, but they really did not hit with Xavier Legette, and even more so the year prior when they drafted Jonathan Mingo in the top 40 also. So you need speed. You need a speed element to this receiving core that Xavier Legette was not bringing to the table, despite what his 40 time says. And I can tell you, even though KC Concepcion didn't run a 40, he is going to bring that speed element. This guy is explosive as heck. His downfield ability is as good as it gets in this draft class. And it really is just with him, his hands. Can he drop? Can he hold on to more passes than he dropped at the collegiate level? Because an over 10% drop rate each of the past 2 seasons is terrifying, but he had some really nice contested catches. It's not as if he doesn't track the ball well. He just drops a lot of easy ones. So I hope he figures that out, because if he does, and he goes to Carolina here, they could have a scary trio of wide receivers. All
right, next up we have the Cowboys. This is their second pick in the first round, part of the Micah Parsons trade. Addressed the corner position earlier at pick 12. So, JP, what does Dallas do at 20?
This one's interesting. They have him go offensive lineman Spencer Fano from Utah. And I think it makes sense. I think there's a lot of wonder about what's going to happen with Terrence Steele going into 2026. And even with Terrence Steele being there, I don't think that should stop them from taking guys great as Fano, who can play right tackle. You can play him inside if you really wanted to. But in Dallas, he'll play right tackle. And when you think about great elite Dallas Cowboys teams, they have all been super duper strong on the offensive line. I am curious if this pick is one where the Cowboys trade out or trade back for somebody who's trying to get ahead, to try and go get maybe a Ty Simpson or maybe one of the falling receivers. But if the Cowboys stay here and pick Fano, it makes a lot of sense, and I do think that he'll help solidify the offensive line for the next decade plus.
All right, guys, hang tight. Before we move on, just want to quickly recap picks 15 through 20 in Mike Renner's mock here. Of course, Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana going to the Jets. Monroe Freeling going to the Lions. We have the Panthers picking a wide receiver in the first round yet again with KC Concepcion. All right, we got one quarterback already went off the board, of course, in Fernando Mendoza. But can Ty Simpson sneak into the first round? We're going to discuss coming up. You're watching HQ Spotlight here on CBS Sports Network. Back here for our Mock Draft Monday. We're picking things up at number 21, where the Steelers are on the clock. And here's where things are getting a little spicy, a little interesting. We have the Steelers taking a quarterback here with this pick, Renner.
Yes, Alabama's Ty Simpson comes off the board. And we were kind of just talking during the break about how the musical chairs of quarterbacks this year left a lot of teams without one. There's a lot of teams going in this draft, and it's like, what are they doing? You know, for the next 2 to 3 years of the quarterback position? I don't know. Well, now we know for Steelers fans, and I think a big part of the reason, I've been saying it all offseason, a big part of the reason you hire Mike McCarthy as your head coach is his track record of working with quarterbacks, whether it's high-end, you know, the starters he's had and guys like Aaron Rodgers, or even just backups who he made into millionaires like Matt Flynn. I think he has done a good job wherever he's gone at the quarterback position. That's unfortunately what Mike Tomlin didn't do post Ben Roethlisberger. So to me, Ty Simpson has enough tools to develop, and there really is just not another one after him. If you're not taking Ty Simpson, there's not a developmental guy in this draft class I like until day 3. So because of that, yeah, you take him here.
You know, Ryan Wilson, I feel like he's been really pushing in some of his mocks for the Steelers to trade up and get Ty Simpson. So I feel like he'll be very excited about this as well. Next up, we have the Chargers. They're picking at 22, taking Peter Woods out of Clemson here. And Mike, when you wrote about this in your mock, you said this is exactly what the Chargers need along the defensive line. So JP, why does this fit make sense?
This would make sense because Peter Woods, when he is fully locked in, is one of the more imposing pass rushers in the defensive tackle class. In a defensive tackle group that doesn't really have a lot of pure pass rushing guys or 3 techniques, Peter Woods is the best of the bunch. The biggest question is if you were going to get a full season of him being locked in. That's what happened at 2025. There are a lot of questions about what happened at Clemson in 2025, but when he is fully committed to winning football games, he is such a dominant force on the interior. The Chargers don't really have a player like him that wins with quickness or agility on the inside, and I think they need some of that pressure and that ability to get pressure on the inside to help extend the career of Khalil Mack and make Tuli Tuipulotu much better. And there's nobody else that can get the best out of players and get the most out of players than Jim Harbaugh.
All right, next up we have the Eagles who are on the clock. So, Mike, what do they do at number 23?
I have Howie Roseman going back to his roots, taking an offensive lineman. It's Arizona State's Max Iheanachor, probably the most physically gifted offensive lineman in this draft class. I mean, he only started playing football in 2021 when he got to college, and he's going to be a first-round draft pick. That's how special this guy is as an athlete. And I always like the guys who really don't have bad habits. It's like when you started playing football in college, you really don't have much to work with in terms of bad habits that you see from on tape. So he is all developmental potential, and he goes to a place where he doesn't have to play right away. You know, they haven't taken a guy since Cam Jurgens in 2022 in the first 2 rounds along the offensive line. And so if, you know, Lane Johnson were to retire after this year, or, you know, Landon Dickerson, the health goes wrong and he has to retire also, it's like all of a sudden it gets really thin there up front. So they just need an infusion of youth along that offensive line.
All right, the Browns are back. Shout out to the Jags for this one. It's the Browns' second pick of the first round. They address O-line with the first, and now they're taking Jordyn Tyson at number 24. Wide out there, JP.
This makes a lot of sense for Tyson, whose brother Jalen Tyson plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I think Jordyn Tyson offers a lot of what the Browns need as a winner on the outside. I think there are a lot of issues and a lot of question marks for Jordyn Tyson as a receiver, especially with his injury history, some issues against physicality. But when he's on the field, he is such a dynamic player who can create separation. I think his body control is so good when the ball's in the air. He has great ball skills. And I think he just is a big play waiting waiting to happen both in the intermediate and deep parts of the field. And the Browns need somebody who can create some separation, take some attention off of Harold Fannin Jr. They just need somebody on the outside that they can trust. And if Jordyn Tyson is going to get fully healthy, if you're going to get 15 games, say, of Jordyn Tyson, I think he could be the best receiver in this draft class. So the Browns getting him at 24 feels like a steal.
And make it easy on the family, right? Like certain parts of the season, they can go watch a Cavs game, then go to the Browns and just hit it 2 birds, 1 stone there. Let's go to the Bears. They are on the clock. Pick number 25. They take Keldrick Falk. So how does he fit in with that current edge room, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, he looks like all the other guys in this edge room. It's kind of Ryan Poles has been drafting and training for long physical defensive ends. That's what Dennis Allen has loved, their defensive coordinator, over the course of his tenure as DC. So Keldrick Falk just ticks a lot of boxes for this team. And I think his versatility and his potential for growth is what would be so intriguing about him at pick number 25 here. They don't necessarily need him right away, but what he could be is the early down guy so that Austin Booker is fresh for third downs, which is where he really thrives. So there's a lot to like in terms of the athlete that Keldrick Falk is and what he could develop into, and early on his ability to play the run.
All right, next up, we have the Bills on the clock, picking at number 26. It's the Joe Brady era, and they're certainly trying to prove that their Super Bowl window has not closed just yet. So, JP, what is the move here for Buffalo?
This move is Malachi Lawrence, edge from UCF, which would be a meteoric rise for Lawrence, who's considered more of a day 2 pick, more of a third-round guy. And then he goes to the Shrine Bowl, and then he goes to the Combine and puts up a 4.52 40-yard dash, 40-inch vertical at 6'4", 250-plus pounds, almost 34-inch arms. But the thing that stands out the most for me with Malachi Lawrence is he is a finisher. He is great at flattening the corner at the top of his pass rush and finishing plays. That's something that the Bills really need. They don't have this style of pass rusher on their team, all of them win sort of with power. And because there's some limitations with Malachi Lawrence as a run defender with play strength in his hands right now, you don't have to play him very early on early downs. That's what Bradley Chubb and Greg Rousseau can do. But this pick could be more for helping him pass rush right now. And then as Malachi Lawrence grows and as Malachi Lawrence has more time in the NFL, he's going to become a full-fledged 3-down player. So I really like this pick for Buffalo to sort of turn up their pass rush and get a little faster.
Yeah, while this might be a little surprising, this name, I think he does go in the first round for one big reason. Traits. You can't coach what this guy has. 4'5", 140, 40-inch vertical. It's like that's what wins historically at the NFL level, is the guys who have unmitigated explosiveness, because you can teach him a couple moves at that sort of level of athlete, and he'll be able to win at the NFL level. And I think specifically for the Bills, a defense we lamented all last fall how slow they looked. Jim Leonhard now gets a guy who can really be a true 3-4 outside linebacker, and that ability to either rush the passer or drop into coverage.
All right, next up we have the Niners, who are picking at number 27, where, Mike, they're seemingly making plans for when Trent Williams calls it a career.
Yeah, you have to at this point. He's like kind of threatening to leave. He's about to turn 40. He's getting up there in age. He's already defied Father Time, but you can only do that for so long. I think Caleb Lomu is a guy that would fit perfectly because of the athlete he is in Kyle Shanahan's offense. He's really nimble. He, I think, could probably play guard in that scheme, even though that's not ideally where I would want him. So you can let him see the football field right away there with this pick. And then when Trent does decide to hang it up, this could be your left tackle of the future. To me, he's one of the most naturally gifted guys in pass protection. The way he uses his hands, you see just raw natural ability that obviously needs to be honed, needs to be refined. That's why he falls to this point in the draft. But if you're the 49ers, it's really time to start addressing the future of this offensive line.
There you have it, picks 21 through 27. Let's quickly recap that. You just heard it there. Caleb Lomu going to the 49ers, Jordyn Tyson going off the board to the Browns, and then Ty Simpson creeping his way into the first round as the Steelers take him number 21 overall as their quarterback of the future. All right, we got to hit a break here, but coming up as we hit the home stretch of the first round here, we got a couple of corners going off the board. We're going to pick things back up for our Mock Draft Monday after the break. Back here on HQ Spotlight, our Mock Draft Monday continues with Mike Renner and JP Acosta. We've hit the home stretch of the first round, picking up at pick 28, where the Texans are on the clock. So, JP, what is the move here?
they got to keep going offensive line. They go Blake Miller here, offensive tackle from Clemson. And it makes a lot of sense why Blake Miller's name is starting to gain a lot more steam as we get closer to the NFL draft. NFL teams love his profile, love his football character. 54 career starts at Clemson. He has been a starting right tackle for them since he stepped onto the field. 6'7", 315 pounds, great athlete with almost 35-inch arms. That stuff is going to get you drafted in the first round. And if you're the Houston Texans, whose defense is already Super Bowl caliber, and I know they added a guy in Braden Smith this offseason to help at right tackle, but Blake Miller's pressure rate constantly going down. His upward trend of play makes him a back end of the first round caliber kind of guy for me. And I think as long as you have Blake Miller sort of your right tackle of the future, and you have Braden Smith being your let's go win the Super Bowl right now kind of player, the Texans are really setting themselves up to go and draft a guy like Miller and kind of keep this train going, to just keep adding offensive line picks until some of them work out.
All right, let's go back to the Chiefs at number 29. Now we know KC lost 2 starting corners in the offseason. They're picking Chris Johnson here. So, Renner, how does he translate to Spags' system?
I think he could play either on the outside or inside. To me, there's not a lot of holes in his profile. When you watch his tape, I thought maybe he's not a great athlete. Well, he went to the combine and he tested like a great athlete. The guy really has ticked every single box throughout the process. And at the Senior Bowl and the one-on-ones and press coverage, for my money, this was the best guy there. So at that point, to me, the only reason not to put him in the first round is the school he played at in San Diego State. And when that's the case, I think he's going to be a first rounder. For the Kansas City Chiefs in particular, if you want to play corner and Spags defense, you better have a strong track record in press coverage. Chris Johnson has that. So for all those reasons, I think this would be a great building block to get that secondary back to the form we saw when they won some Super Bowls.
All right, picking back things up with the Dolphins here, picking at 30. That pick coming via the Broncos. And JP, they're addressing the O-line.
They are going offensive line here, but pick 30, the Dolphins really could just throw a dart at any position in this on their team and say, yeah, we can draft that guy at first round, because that's how depleted their roster is. But here they go, Chase Bizantis. He's going to play guard for them. And Bizantis is one of the more interesting players in this draft class. I love his ability to redirect, and I love his refinement in pass protection. He's able to keep his hands inside, and he's a really good finisher when it comes to blocking. I think that he's going to be a guy that as we get closer to the draft, you're going to see his name start to pop up in round 1 mocks more, because it feels like teams are needing guards. Teams need those guys in the interior. As defensive tackles keep getting better, as teams start to run more gap scheme like power and counter, you're going to see the importance of guards start to rise. And with Gray Zabel helping the Seahawks win a Super Bowl last season in his rookie year, you're going to see guys like Chase Bizantis come off the board towards the back end of round 1. I think Miami just needs a lot of help everywhere. But to fix that offensive line, because you really need to know if Malik Willis is going to be your guy. And so I think having a guy like Chase Bizantis will really help you start to figure that out.
Okay, we've reached the final 2 picks of the first round, starting with the Patriots at number 31, taking R. Mason Thomas. So how do we like this fit overall, Mike?
This is JP's guy. I love the fit specifically for the New England Patriots because they have this insane interior, right? You got Christian Barmore, you got Milton Williams, you got Corey Durden. I mean, they made Caleb Chason look good, and you both, as Jags fans, know how difficult that can be to do. To me, R. Mason Thomas is the perfect complement to that because of his ability to bend the edge. He gets to the top of pockets consistently. Well, there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks when they play the New England Patriots backing out of the pocket. They're not going to want to step up into Christian Barmore. They're not going to want to step up with Milton Williams bearing down on them. Well, then, oh, by the way, here's R. Mason Thomas coming through the back door, finding you when you do take that step back in the top of the pocket. So I think he's going to rack up sacks in a defense like this. And it's a position where the Patriots have, like, vets. You know, they got Draymond Jones, you got Harold Landry. No one's going into a game in 2026 saying we got to prepare for Draymond Jones and Harold Landry, unfortunately. So this would change that with R. Mason Thomas.
Like Mike said, this is my favorite player in the entire draft class. I love R. Mason Thomas, and I love his ability to get upfield. He is one of the most explosive. I think he is the bendiest edge in this draft class, and I think he has the ability to flatten the corner at the top of his pass rush and finish plays really well. I think if he didn't have the injury where he tore his quad after a scoop and score against Tennessee, we'd be talking about him in a much different light. but I do think for the Patriots, who have a guy in Draymond Jones who wins with power, Harold Landry used to be able to win with speed, but injury sort of sapped that in 2025. They need somebody, like Mike said, that can funnel and sort of create some sacks off the pressures that Milton Williams and Christian Barmore are going to make. So I love R. Mason Thomas here, and I think he is a perfect Mike Vrabel guy in this defense.
Yeah, 7 sacks, 28 QB pressures there in 10 games last season. Finally, we got the Seahawks, the Super Bowl champs, and they are picking Colton Hood in the first round here at pick 32, JP.
It's tough to really find some needs for the Seahawks because when you're a Super Bowl champions, you don't really have a lot of needs. But because Reek Woolen is now on the Eagles, I think they can have another corner to sort of allow themselves to keep doing what they did last year with Devin Witherspoon, to play him inside and outside. And I feel like Colton Hood is a really nice fit for what they want to do. Colton Hood is physical at the line of scrimmage. He's long, he's athletic, and I think that at Tennessee in Jermod McCoy's stead, he played really well, especially with his eyes towards the quarterback and getting vision on the ball. I do think there are some issues in man coverage that pop up, but when you have the length, when you have the physicality that Colton Hood has at the line of scrimmage, and as much zone coverage as the Seahawks like to play, I think he's a really nice fit that allows Devin Witherspoon to play inside or outside, and it allows you to rotate in with Josh Jobe. I really like this pick for the Seahawks to sort of replenish their defense.
All right, gentlemen, hang tight, but there you have it. The first round officially in the books. Quickly recapping picks 28 through 32, where we have Blake Miller going to the Texans as they address their offensive line once again. Chris Johnson going to KC, R. Mason Thomas going to the Patriots, and then Colton Hood out of Tennessee going to Seattle. We're going to dip into the second and third rounds as part of our Mock Draft Monday coming up after the break. Back here on HQ Spotlight on CBS Sports Network, round 1 of our mock is complete here on Mock Draft Monday. Now we are looking ahead to round 2, looking at picks 33 through 42. We got Akeem Mesidor out of Miami going to the Tennessee Titans, CJ Allen going to the Giants, Avion Terrell going to the Browns. Name a few of those picks there, 33 through 42. So we have Mike Renner and JP Acosta back with us because we want to discuss teams that have multiple selections in rounds 2 and 3. 5 different teams we're going to get to, starting with the Miami Dolphins. We got a full screen of all of their moves here, 1, 2, and 3. So, Mike, when you're taking a look at this, what are your biggest takeaways from the Dolphins and the picks that they have made here in this mock?
I think they got a lot of really good football players. That's what I'm focusing on here. When I was going through for them, I wasn't chasing home run swings. I was chasing a lot of guys that I know can go on this football field tomorrow and play and make an impact for this Dolphins team. And I think the first 4 picks at minimum are guys I feel like that can very easily do that, as well as the 2 DBs in the second round. So this could be a transformative draft, at least a floor-raising draft for the Miami Dolphins. That's how I would approach it, because there's really not a lot of home run swings to be had in this draft. That's just the nature of the draft class. So just find guys you know fill roles for you. That would be my approach for this Dolphins team.
Yeah, when you're the Dolphins and that roster is as barren as it is, you just need to find good players wherever you can get them. I actually really like the pick of Ted Hurst in round 3, the 87th overall pick, because on offense, they just don't have a lot of size at receiver. I mean, think about last season when they did have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the team. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine might have been one of their tallest receivers, and he was 6'1". Ted Hurst is 6'4", 206 pounds, ran a 4.4 and 40-yard dash, and he has the ability to win above the rim as an explosive element as a receiver. And I think that's something that they really need to sort of open up the offense, especially if they're going to bring a little bit of elements from the Packers offense to Miami. So I like what they're doing and just getting as many chances at bat as you can to see if any of them turn into at least a single or a double. That would be a win for the Dolphins.
All right, we're going to keep it in the division, starting with the Jets, where, of course, they had 2 picks in the first round. And then, of course, in the second and thirds, they address edge and corner. So, JP, what are your biggest takeaways from the Jets and what they have done in this mock?
They got some really fun players here. One of my favorite players in the draft class, D'Angelo Ponds. Mike and I have talked about him on the show, and I just think that he is such a New York Jets corner. He is such an Aaron Glenn corner. If you look at their profiles side by side, you would think D'Angelo Ponds is Aaron Glenn reincarnated as a player. So I love that they're able to get him. He can play outside if you want to try him there, but I think he'd be at best on the inside in the slot. And then you add a guy like Zion Young, who is sort of the opposite of David Bailey, who is a little bit more physical, one of the better run defenders on the edge that doesn't offer a lot of juice as a pass rusher, but I think he complements what David Bailey and guys like Will McDonald and all the other edges on the Jets roster really have. So I do think they got some nice complementary pieces on day 2, along with Omar Cooper Jr. and David Bailey in round 1.
All right, next up, let's go to the Bears, who are, of course, trying to capitalize on the success that we saw in year 1 with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. So, Mike, when you're thinking of Chicago, everything that they have done, what stands out the most to you?
I think it's just the plugging of holes to get this team over the edge, right? You obviously need a center now. After this offseason, Sam Heck, to me, I think one of the more athletic centers in this draft class, a perfect fit for Ben Johnson's offense. You need some interior pressure. Dominique Orange can bring that at defensive tackle. And then you need a safety with some range and coverage. And to me, Bud Clark is ideal for that. He's been awesome in coverage over the course of his career at TCU, was awesome at the Senior Bowl. It really is just, can he play in the box? Well, the Bears, that's not what they want. That's why they turned over their safety group from last year. So this is kind of, I don't want to say a short-term draft, because you never really draft for short-term, but this is a draft where you plug all the holes that are really stopping you from being a Super Bowl contender in the NFC.
And that's really what the Bears need. They need to plug holes, especially on the defensive line. Dominique Orange and Keldrick Falk helped that run defense get a lot better. They were second in the NFL in terms of most yards before contact given up per carry. And then Bud Clark can make plays on the ball and has speed on the back end. That's what they're looking for. And I agree with Mike here. And they just filled holes on defense, because that offense is already Super Bowl caliber.
2 more teams to get to, starting with the Eagles. When we look at what they've done in the second and third rounds, Malachi Fields, Taylon Green. So, Renner, overall, we know, the Eagles typically have a lot of success when it comes to drafting talent, but biggest takeaways, what is catching your eye here about Philly?
I'm super intrigued by Taylon Green specifically. Not only is he's going to back up Jalen Hurts, but he is such a high-end athlete that I think you can dream up some packages for this guy to play outside of just being a quarterback. He's 6'6" and runs in the 4.3s. The guy is one of the most athletic players to come into the NFL in a long time. And the Eagles are a franchise that, they're willing to think outside the box with what a guy could be at the next level. So I think he's an interesting one. And then the Malachi Fields pick, just getting another reliable wide receiver in the fold there in case, A.J. Brown, whatever happens with him over the next few months here.
All right, last but certainly not least, JP and I's Jacksonville Jaguars, where the Jags, obviously, as we know, have no picks in the first round. So when I was taking a glance at this mock, and I don't know about you, JP, but seeing Nuss on there didn't really inspire so much confidence in me. So what are you thinking? Because this is a team that I felt like right around, the trade deadline, relatively quiet, and here's what we're dealing with in the mock.
So the Nussmeier pick is fascinating. I'm fascinated by it because the Jaguars don't really have a lot of answers for their backup quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence right now. And also, once Nussmeier goes off the board around day 2, the quarterback class takes a massive drop. So maybe you're thinking Garrett Nussmeier can be a quality backup quarterback for Trevor Lawrence, who has found ways to stay healthy, especially in his in the latest season with Liam Cohen. But I do wonder if that pick at 88 could be used on positions like safety. I think if they wanted to add a cornerback, they could at 88. But Grayson Halton at 56 is one of my favorite picks in this mock. I do like what he offers in terms of a different body style for the Jaguars at defensive tackle. And then Bryce Lance fits the big, tall, fast that they've been looking for to help round out the depth chart at wide receiver. And because Travis Hunter's going to be playing more corner, maybe they're still sort of thinking they can go and draft a corner on day 3. But the Nussmeier pick definitely caught my eye when they pulled up the graphic here. But I am curious about that pick, and it makes sense when it comes to backup quarterback. But I wonder if they need to address other positions there.
Let me give my reasoning here. James Gladstone, his MO, what he's bringing over from Los Angeles to Jacksonville is this high, spray and pray sort of drafting model. You get a lot of draft picks in the middle rounds of the draft, and you see kind of what sticks at that point in the draft. Well, this is kind of just spraying. This is just seeing what sticks. Getting a guy like Garrett Nussmeier at that point, you get a really competent backup. People are paying backups $12-15 million nowadays. That's as much as starting running backs are making in the NFL. So to get a guy, especially given Trevor Lawrence's injury history over the past couple of years, I think it's just shrewd team building. And they did also, there was another pick in this. They had pick 81. They got Sam Roush, the Stanford tight end, a blocking tight end. So it wasn't just, you got a lot of picks in that range. You can use one of them freely if you want.
I like how Renner is just trying to talk us down, JP. He's like, let me just make y'all feel better. Guys, hang tight. We have more to discuss. Obviously, we're going to talk about the quarterbacks. We had 4 QBs go in this 3-round mock, including 2 in the first. More quarterback talk coming your way in terms of the draft after the break.